told you I'd be back. So I told you I've been in the lab working on stuff, right? Now I get to start bringing it out to you and telling you exactly what it is that I have been working on. So here we go. I actually mentioned it in my last video, but I know I didn't put it out there so blatantly. We're putting it out there now. We're just going to pop the top off and we're putting it out there. So, what I've been working on is basically understanding that we use this term a lot within many different spaces, especially when we're talking about, in all the different type of social justice spaces that there are, right? Whether it be like disability justice, environmental justice, healing justice, abolitionist work as well, right? All of these spaces, we end up using this one word every single time, but we always use this word in the sense of an outcome. And the word I'm talking about is erasure. I was in that space as well where we are always looking around. We see that history is being erased, right? In America, we see that especially Black American history is being erased. African American history is being erased. The things that are actually even happening within our governmental systems by like the overturning of Roe v. Wade, that was a form of erasure for the sake that women's reproductive rights were being hit. Now we're having a hard time. Now women, femmes, people with uteruses are having a hard time getting abortions, getting reproductive justice, getting just reproductive things, period, because of erasure. We talk about erasure as an outcome when it comes down to anti-Blackness. The reason why we see so much discrimination and anti-Black racism being directed towards people who are Black, who present Black, especially if they are darker skinned as well. We see it through police brutality and all this thing. We say that people are being erased. We talk about erasure as well when it comes down to the different genocides and the wars that are literally taking place globally, right? We hear it from what is taking place in Sudan right now, how literally military units from the RSF are going in and literally unaliving hundreds of people within villages. We see it when it's happening within the Congo because of the mining for cobalt, illegal, let's say that, the illegal mining for cobalt. We see it within what is happening within Gaza as well too, when it comes down to the IDF and how they are just literally, again, unaliving thousands of people. We see erasure and we think it's an outcome. We see erasure when it comes down to laws. We see erasure everywhere you look at. We use this word. People are being erased. People are being erased. We see this, we see erasure. Okay, I completely agree. However, where I deviate from is where my scholarship has taken me to understand that erasure is actually not just an outcome. It's not. We're seeing all the outcomes of what's taking place, right? We're seeing what white supremacy does and how it's causing erasure. We see what anti-Blackness does and how it's causing erasure. We see what even things like colorism is doing and how it causes erasure. All of these different systems that have been in place have been causing erasure. However, we have not, and what I've been digging into and really figuring out and putting out there and really diving into my scholarship is that erasure is not just an outcome. It's actually its own full-fledged system. There is a whole system out here of erasure. But because we don't know that erasure is actually a system, we keep looking at it as though it is just an outcome of these other systems. What if I were to tell you that all these other systems are actually birthed out of the system of erasure? I know. It feels like weird to say that, but the reality is that what I've been doing, and through lived experience, as well as through scholarship, through peer support as well too, through learning, through digging and through making connections, through pattern recognition as well too, I have seen that erasure is a whole system and it's been operating the entire time. And the reason why we have such a hard time trying to say defeat white supremacist delusion is because it is actually being birthed out of something. Just like colonization. Colonization is actually, it comes out of erasure. It comes out of erasure. So before I move forward, let me define what I have come up with the terminology for the system of erasure to make this a lot clearer so that we understand this is not just an outcome, but it's a whole system that has been operating, but we don't really see it. We don't know it. We don't recognize it. So we don't know how to actually deal with it because we're dealing with all the other things. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be. We do need to deal with white supremacist delusion. We do need to deal with colorism. We need to deal with texturism. We need to deal with anti-Blackness. We need to deal with anti-Black racism. We need to deal with imperialism. We need to deal with all of these other systems. But there is something that actually is connecting all of them together and is actually bigger than just white supremacist delusion and even capitalism or late stage capitalism. The bigger system is that of erasure. So my definition of the system of erasure is this. It is a subtle and insidious organized system, including principles, procedures, and ideologies that is set on destroying all traces of a person's humanity and humanity at large. I know that was a lot, right? That was a lot. But I'm going to say it one more time so that you can really just sit in this and understand the system of erasure. My definition of this is that it is a subtle and insidious organized system, including principles, procedures, and ideologies that is set on destroying all traces of a person's humanity and humanity at large. I'm going to give a Selah moment. Okay. Yes. This is what I have been working on, is seeing that we have been dealing with the system of erasure and that all these pockets, and I don't want to say pockets, but all these other systems as well too, all are literally birthed out of the system of erasure. And that it has been hard for us to deal with it, not just in America, globally. That there's a reason why we don't have one answer as to, well, how do we deal with this? How do you deal with just climate change? How do we come together? We come together by understanding that erasure is not just an outcome, but that erasure is a system, and that all these other systems have been operating the way they have, and exponentially, unfortunately speaking, because we're not dealing with the system of erasure. Erasure was literally created so that it destroys a person's humanity and humanity at large. We've seen it and we're actively seeing it and we continue to see it. We see it with, like I said, with all the different things that I've named. We see it. We see it in the day-to-day when you're not able, when you end up applying for a job, but because AI now is reading the resumes and it's trying to quote unquote remove bias from it. But if you don't have the specific keywords, your resume goes out the window. So you could actually be the best candidate, but because AI now because AI is being utilized in order to scrutinize resumes, though they're thinking this is bias free, it's not. You are literally actively erasing a person's humanity, which is making it hard. We hear the cries out from millennials and from Gen Zers and from even some Gen Xers that are having a hard time finding work. It's because erasure has been embedded within it. It is because it is the system of erasure. It is the thing that literally is dictating how all of these other systems are working. But if we can deal with erasure, we can deal with a lot of these other systems immediately and simultaneously. But I feel like we need to be able to come together to see that there has been something greater working that we have not had language for, that we have not been able to really see. There are so many practitioners out there that I, oh my gosh, absolutely love, and that I work, that I have learned from, and that I have gleaned on and continue to build on their scholarship to make these connections to show that actually erasure isn't just an outcome, that it's actually a whole system out here, that it literally is like the Matrix. We see that white supremacy is like the Matrix. It is, it's a part of it. But erasure, because of that subtle and insidious part of it, you're not going to know that that's actually the thing that is operating in the background, that that's actually the motherboard, that that's where the operating system is coming from, is from this system of erasure. And the reason why is because erasure doesn't want to be seen. Hence why subtle and insidious. You're not going to really see it, especially if you don't know how to necessarily call it out. If you don't know that it's erasure happening and not just white supremacy, delusion, and not just imperialism or neocolonialism taking place, right? Or not just police brutality taking place or wage theft that is taking. If you don't know, if you aren't able to really scrutinize these systems, you won't know that erasure is operating. And the reason why is because erasure does not want to be called by its name. It wants to be called by everything else than its name. Because once you are able to call a thing, look, there's so much that has to take place immediately that has to take place when you're able to call a thing a thing. And when you are able to call out erasure, that means immediately there are certain mechanisms that start coming into play in order to correct this. In order to literally, I don't want to say fix, because it's not something that you can necessarily fix, but what I'm here to do is to expose erasure, is to expose the system of erasure. And this is the interesting part. So erasure actually operates on multiple levels, or in multiple frameworks, if you want to say it, right? Like erasure operates on 3 different levels. And what I've seen is that erasure works on an intrapersonal level, meaning that to you personally, it works in a personal level. It works on then what I like to call, when I say that personal level, I like to call it yourship. But erasure also operates on a collective level. And the collectivity, whether it be in family groups, whether it be in cultural groups, whether it be ethnic groups, whether it be in, organizations as well too, organizations and corporations, those are all collectives. So erasure operates on the collectives, and we've seen it. We've been able to see erasure in the collective level, as well as this is the bigger one, on the systemic level. And that's actually the easiest level to tend to call out when it comes down to erasure. A lot of these things that I was just naming, anti-Blackness, white supremacy delusion, cis heteropatriarchy, colorism, homophobia, right? It's what I like to call all the isms, Asians, and phobias. All of those are basically children of erasure. All the isms, any ism you can think of, even nationalism, right? Nationalism, tribalism, patriotism, all of these isms, and even the Asians, discrimination, right, is a big one as well. All of the phobias, homophobia, transphobia, queerphobia, all of those are systemic levels of erasure. When we've seen the government remove Roe versus Wade, and now we're seeing what is happening with reproductive rights, that is systemic level of erasure, because then that means people's humanity is being literally destroyed. They're trying, like erasure, you have to understand, erasure's goal, no matter on what level it works on, erasure's goal is to destroy all traces, every single trace. Hear me when I'm saying this. Erasure's goal is to destroy all traces of a person's humanity and humanity at large. Hence why, with the founding of America, America's founding, not Turtle Island, so please don't get it twisted. America's founding, it was founded upon genocide. Genocide and white supremacist delusion, right? Underneath the guise of religious freedom. However, because we know true history, because we understand the real history of what took place here, there was a genocide, and it's still happening. There was a genocide that took place on American soil to literally destroy all traces of indigenous people's humanity and their humanity at large. We saw it. Now, was it called erasure? Was it called a system of erasure? No. It was called manifest destiny. That's what it was called. It was called the Trail of Tears. We just look at these and think like these are just historical events, but we don't understand the thing that is actually driving this is the system of erasure. That is erasure, to remove, and it's not even just to remove, it is to destroy whatever traces of humanity that you have. That is its goal. And when it happens on a personal level, right? When it happens within your shit, what basically the system of erasure is trying to do, it's trying to get you to dehumanize your own self. Because if you can dehumanize your own self, it's doing its job. That means now the outcome of it becomes objectification, means that you now are turning yourself into an object. Hence why we talk about capitalism and late stage capitalism, why this hustle and grind culture is so bad, why the hustle and grind culture literally is dehumanizing and destroying humanity, because people are not able to get back in touch with themselves, with their humanity. It's why you see spiritualists and leaders, right? This is why you see people talking about like you need to get back into your body. There's a reason why there's been such an uptick when it comes down to the wellness industries, because the wellness industry is trying to get people, us, back in touch with our humanity. All of this stuff, all of these other systems that have been operating underneath the guise of which is the system of erasure, it literally is stripping us of our humanity. That is the reason why we have a problem with 45, because he is hell-bent on stripping certain demographics and groups of their humanity. And the thing that we need to learn to not do is to play in this game, is to play in the hand of the system of erasure, is for us to not remove our own humanity. So when it comes down to the way you are personally within your shit, when you don't recognize and understand who you are, it is easy to be extracted from. It is easy to be used. It is easy to get caught up in this whole entire hustle and grind culture. It is easy to put yourself in a position where you end up becoming objectified, right? It is very easy for those things to take place. When you have to deal with traumas, past traumas, abuses, even just because of decisions that you've made, it is easy to do. It is easy to play into the hands, into this system of erasure. So I'm saying, like, yeah, you're shit, but it's actually self-erasure. You are erasing yourself because you are not tapping back into your full humanity. You as a person, all of those things that make you up, all of the things, all of your different identities that are a part of you, they're necessary. And when you end up working in different spaces, whether it be in corporate spaces, whether it be in nonprofit spaces, whether it even be in entrepreneurial spaces, right? Even if it's just on that level, there are so many things that are taking place that end up contributing to self-erasure. Now, when you're talking about like even say the corporations and all this other type of stuff, right? And the collective, even your family units or ethnic groups as well, they can play heavily into erasure. They can start using things such as respectability politics. such as ableism, to end up erasing your humanity and humanity at large. This is why certain pockets of people, certain demographics of people are quote unquote invisible. They're invisible because they're being erased. Their humanity is being erased. We're not talking about disability justice enough. We're not talking about how COVID was a disabling event that caused mass levels of erasure. We aren't naming the million plus people that have died literally because of COVID. We don't name that. And when we're not able to name a thing, the system can continue and be perpetuated. And this is why it becomes problematic. This is why you have people that can have these big events, whatever it is, can have these big events, but they do not put in COVID cautious precautions. They're not being COVID conscious by having people masked, by having places with air filters, by having air purifiers as well too. Because in essence, what you are doing when you are not paying attention, when you are operating from a system of erasure, again, it's insidious and subtle, and it does not want to be called by its name. When you dismiss those things, you have literally erased an entire group's humanity. This is why this call for, oh, let's build community. Well, one of the very easiest ways to build community is to be COVID conscious, put on a mask. But again, because we're not calling a spade, we're not calling a thing, we're just looking and saying, you know what, they're just being extra. They're just asking for too much. Why do we have, it's because erasure is at play. And you are playing into the hands of it as well as being complicit with it for the sake of certain groups, right? That is it on a collective level, that you can have gatherings and all these things, but you're not thinking about those that are chronically ill, those are compromised, those that are disabled, those that are not able to show up in those spaces and contribute their humanity even to the collective for the sake of presence because of erasure. It's not just an outcome. It is a full-fledged system. And lastly, we see it when it comes down to the systemic. Systemic erasure is real. This is what I like to call systemic shit. Collective erasure is what I like to call their shit. Because even in their shit, your family, if they are imposing ways of you to try to be, that is not true to who you are. This is why we see a wave. I mean, I don't actually think it's new, truth be told. I just think that what's happening is that it's being exposed when it comes down to the going no contact with people in their family. The whole going no contact is happening because that means family members are actually actively erasing you because they're trying to make you be something that you are not. You are not being given the space to be able to just be in what I like to call your full personhood. You're not able to just operate in certain ways. Your quirks, your idiosyncrasies, those that are not able to flourish. So this whole entire idea of being fitting into boxes, those are forms of erasure. And we do perpetuate them one to another as well as familially to the people that are within that space. This is why certain traditions within certain cultures have erasure tendencies and are operating through systems of erasure without understanding. So when you see your child bucking back, or it comes down to a place where they're going no contact, and I say it for good reason, because harm is being done. Yes, it's because they've actually been dealing with the system of erasure. Chattel slavery was a major system of erasure, and that becomes systemic. That is one of the systemic, right, forms of erasure. That is systemic erasure, chattel slavery. Being stripped of your name, being stripped of your families, being literally, being essayed, right? Literally being unalived. This is where the whole idea of strange fruit comes from. It is because it is the system of erasure. Yes, it is through the lens of white supremacist delusion, but it is erasure at play. So even for what, and shout out to Isabella Wilkerson for writing the book Cast, and even shout out to Ava DuVernay for the movie Origins. Cast is a part of erasure. This is why cast can happen anywhere. It's not just in one space. It is because that is how big the system of erasure is. It embodies literally every ism, every Asian, and every phobia you can think of is literally birthed from erasure. All of it is. It is all birthed from erasure. Every single one of them. So yes, the caste system is a form of systemic erasure. Anti-Blackness is a form of systemic erasure. And we see anti-Blackness, just look at the US past elections. That's erasure. Whether you agree with the politic or not, I'm not here to talk about that. But that is erasure. For the sake that misogynoir and anti-Blackness had a very big hand in what was taking place. It's erasure. It is erasure. Going through the lens, again, of white supremacist delusion, but it's still erasure. When we are seeing our trans cids literally being unalived, and the laws that are being created in order to keep them from being able to access medical care, in order to access reproductive care, in order to access even economic probability to be able to make a living. Those are all forms of erasure. So we tend to see the outcomes by the laws, by these things. We get to see the outcomes through texturism. Hence why something like the Crown Act even had to be created so that Black women, Black femmes, Black trans folk, Black queer could wear their hair the way they needed to, the way it grows out their head, without being discriminated against. Multiple forms of erasure. There is systemic erasure that is also moving into collective erasure, and it plays heavily into personal, that self-erasure. So erasure is not just an outcome. It's not something that just happens. We have to look at what are the inputs. And if the input is this subtle and insidious, organized, hear me, organized system, including principles, procedures, and ideologies, we need to understand we're dealing with the system of erasure and not just an outcome. The 1619 Project, beautiful work, by the way. Shout out to Hannah Jones for that. Beautiful work. That is the system of erasure that is taking place. What is she uncovering is the system of erasure that has been happening within America. Now, this system of erasure takes on many forms depending on what context you are in and the nuances of who you are as a person. But if your personhood, if your humanity is being stripped, if your humanity is being destroyed and peeled back and being plucked at, hence we talk about like microaggressions, right? Death by 1,000 paper cuts. All of that is actually about the system of erasure. It isn't just an outcome. It's not something that just happens as like, this is what happens afterwards. It's like, no, it is the thing that has been working in the background the entire time. It's been working here the entire time. Hence why activists, advocates that are in these spaces globally talk about things that are being erased. Culture is being erased. History is being erased. Literally, land is being erased. Climate change is a systemic form of erasure. When you have literally Southeast Asian islands where water levels are rising that are covering people's homes that are now becoming almost uninhabitable, that is erasure. Yes, it is under the lens of climate change, but it's erasure. Erasure is the thing that is behind it. And so, my work, I am here because I understand also for the sake that, because I've been seeing this my entire life, I have been seeing erasure, and not only seeing it because I've lived it. I've lived it for the sake of I have seen the way it has enacted itself upon me and tries to enact itself upon me. And this is the thing, the more multiple marginalized identities you have, you embody, and also if you are embodying a marginalized gender or multiple marginalized genders, my goodness, we become the targets. We are the ones who have to deal with the full levels of what this system of erasure is doing. And it is actively doing it. This is why we see it. This is why disability justice has been working actively. This is why you have advocates like Precious and Spice, talking about to peel back these layers, to peel back the layers of disability justice. This is why you have educators like J.T. Perry pulling back these layers of erasure. They're pulling them back because those of us who embody these multiple marginalized identities and genders, those of us who, in my world, what I like to call MMIDs and MaGes. No, I did not come up with the word multiple marginalized identity, but I did come up with the acronym for MMIDs. I did not come up with the acronym for MaGes. That has always been there. But for us as MMIDs and MaGes, what I like to call M&Ms, for those of us who are M&Ms, that if we are a MMID and or MaGe, whether we embody one of them or both of them, we are the ones who are always dealing with the active system of erasure. We're dealing with the system because for us, we have to be able to see the subtleties and the insidious nature of this thing in order to be able to live. More or less than to even get ourselves to a place of thriving, more or less than to even get ourselves now, for me, beyond to a place of flourishing. We have to know. It's the same reason why Black folk, Black women, Black femmes, Black queer folk have had to know the way whiteness works. Because if we do not, it can literally be our lives, which is your humanity. So yes, the system of erasure is hell-bent on stripping you, on destroying your humanity and humanity at large. Hence why you see that people aren't getting paid properly. There's the living wage. There is no proper living wage in the US. Hence why you see poverty taking place. Poverty is an outcome. Poverty is happening because of erasure. This is why we also see the numbers of houseless people increasing. It is because of erasure. It is not just because, we're making people invisible. No, it's erasure at play. And like I said, it wants to be called any other name than by its own. Because once you call it by its name, that means that there is awareness that needs to come into play immediately. There is responsibility that needs to come into play immediately, and as well as accountability. The reason why America does not want to ever say out loud from the government side, especially being an imperialist country, okay? Being an imperialist country, the reason why it does not want to ever call out and say that what America's history has done when it comes down to Black Americans, specifically African Americans, those that are descended of the enslaved Africans that were brought over here. The reason why it doesn't want to say this out loud and say we were wrong is because there's responsibility that needs to be taken into account immediately, which translates over into accountability. And then accountability means then repair needs to be done. And for repair to be done, reparations need to be given. But America doesn't want to say that. Because if it says so, it has to now take responsibility and accountability for these things. So it is easier to continue underneath this system of erasure and not name a thing and call other things out. and not point back to what actually the core is. The core is this system of erasure that is insidious, that is subtle, that is this organized system, including its principles, including its procedures, including the ideologies that come from it, that is set on destroying a person's humanity and humanity at large. This is why it is easy when you do not want to recognize the system of erasure and to call a spade and to see all the different levels that this thing is operating on simultaneously. This trifecta is constantly going on simultaneously, is because then that means that you would have to take account for the things that you have done. And many people do not want to take into account the things that they have done on this systemic level. And it makes it harder then to actually seek liberation, to actually be able to be liberated. I mean, we understand this. Audre Lorde said it. Without community, there is no liberation. But how can you be in community with people that do not want to call a spade or understand the realities of the systems that are at work? And that system is erasure. Erasure is working. The system of erasure has been here. We just did not know what to call it. And I'm calling it out. I'm naming it. I am saying that this is what it is. And that this, truthfully, is what has been kicking our ass in so many ways. And it has been the hindrance to us seeking, really living out, going after, moving forward towards liberation. When we understand the system of erasure, I promise you, it is a game changer. It is a game changer because the decisions that you make, you will start to see things differently. You will start to understand truly then what choices you have, what options you have, what are your access, what spaces of access do you actually have. It means then that you need to take into consideration and say that, okay, yes, you know what? I actually do have privilege. It's okay to say that. Many of us do. The question then is like, but then how do you use your privilege? For me, I say leverage your privilege to lean into liberation. But that means you need to be aware of the system of erasure that is taking place, that this thing has been operating in all of these spaces and places. And because it's been happening on a trifecta, it's been happening with self-erasure, with collective erasure, with systemic erasure, or better yet, with your shit, their shit, and systemic shit. It makes it harder for us to combat. It makes it harder for us to be able to really move forward. It's time that it be exposed. And so that is what I'm here doing. That is what I have been working with in the lab. And so I know you were asking, like, what the F is erasure? This is what it is. It is not just an outcome. It actually is a full-fledged system. And specifically to my mids and my mages, it is the thing that we need to understand how to now really deal with it so that we can truly be liberated. Because, like I said, we deserve liberation. This is beyond a want, a need, or desire. This is something we deserve. Just like truth be told, all humanity deserves liberation. But I am in the space of, I am tired of mids and mages being overlooked. I am tired of mids and mages being erased and not considered when it comes down to liberation. When at the same time, it is a lot of us who have been on the forefront in our own ways to push liberation forward. So, this is what I've been working on, y'all. I'm letting the cat out the bag, and here it is. We need to deal with erasure, and not just as an outcome, but we need to deal with it as though it is a system. We need to deal with it through the principles that it operates by, through the procedures that it operates by, through the ideologies that come from it, and through the other systems that it births. We need to name it and call it out for what it is. Because when we do, it makes it easier for us to truly, truly, truly be able to move forward in this liberation movement. So, I know that was a lot, but that's what I got for y'all. So I know that I'm going to give you some space as well, too, to just like sit with this, because I've had to sit with this and I've been sitting with this for a long time. I just think for such a time as this, that it is time for us to really think about, understand what it is that we are up against. And the thing that we have been fighting and did not know that we have been fighting is actually the system of erasure. That's what this is. So to my mids and mages, know this. I love you. I'm here for you. I understand this mess ain't easy, but I do know something. It is more than possible, in that you do deserve liberation. So till next time, do me a favor, drop in the comment your thoughts. Let's have some discussion about this. Okay? Until next time, I love y'all. Peace.